Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. This is the Maverick Podcast. I am your host, DJ Maverick. Today, we have the super talented marriage and family therapist, the one and only Kelly Morgan. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I'm super excited to have you. Maybe for the 1% of the people out there that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So like you said, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I've been doing that for almost 10 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I've worked in a lot of different mental health settings. I also teach dance. That's
Awesome.
like my first passion. I'm also a certified yoga instructor.
Very cool.
So just lots of random stuff.
Awesome. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up here in Oklahoma, or where did you grow up?
I did. I grew up in Owasso.
Owasso.
So
Where
northeast
is
of
that?
Tulsa.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all your life, Owasso, that's kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I pretty much lived at school, the dance studio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you in high school, you were all about the dance, or like what kind of stuff were you into in high school?
Yeah, dance in school. Like I made good grades. I was a nerd. And
Same.
a dancing nerd. And
Yeah.
then I grew up pretty religious too. I was raised like super Catholic, so I was in church probably 3 days a week too.
Okay. Wow.
So,
Okay. Cool.
yeah.
So like, what was your sort of career projection? Like, what did you want to do? Like, you know, once you're done with high school, like you're like, okay, I'm going to do this. Were you like, I'm going to be a choreographer, or like, where are we going?
Well, I wanted to go be a dance major and maybe do something professionally with dance.
Mm-hmm.
My parents, I think, were trying to talk me out of that, which
Okay.
I'm glad that I didn't do it at this point.
You are? Usually
Yeah.
it's the other way around. Usually it's like, well, probably should have explored that or something. But you're glad you didn't, huh?
Yeah. I really love what I do now, and I'm still able to be involved in dance. But I think I loved being able to perform and be really involved. But I think for a lot of dancers, their careers only last so long.
Yeah, it's tough on the body, right?
Yeah. Like as we speak, I'm still feeling Monday
Oh,
night's
oh,
class
no.
that I taught. So
So what type of dancing were you into? Were you into like more the traditional stuff, or like hip hop or jazz, or like what kind of dance are we talking about?
a little bit of everything. So a lot of ballet, that was kind of like the foundation for the technique.
Okay.
We did tap, jazz, like a lot of ballet.
Okay.
And then once I got to college, there was a lot more hip hop.
Got it. And
I
I've
really
seen
enjoyed
some of the ballet stuff. It's like super tough on your toes, and like all the special shoes you have to wear. It's really tough. And then like even like your diet, right? Like you have to be super conscious of your diet and all that, right?
Yeah, that wasn't a big factor for me until college.
Okay.
And I think it just because I was so active.
Got it.
Not that I ate that bad, but I didn't have to worry about it
Yeah,
too much.
I had a few friends. One of them was in the Nutcracker, and he was always like, "Dude, I have to like watch my diet, or the Nutcracker is not going to happen. Like I'm going to lose the spot, you know."
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pressure on that. But what did your parents say? They're like, "Hey, maybe dance, maybe just keep it as a hobby." And like, what did they suggest, or what did you start doing? Was it on your own that you started exploring other options?
Yeah, so they were just very practical about the things that I could do long term, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I actually started out as an education major.
Oh, okay.
And that lasted maybe a semester.
That's it.
Yeah.
What made you change?
Well, I was also interested in psychology. I'll never forget my AP psych class in high school, and the teacher that I had. She was just amazing, and it was a really interesting class just to learn about, I guess, how our minds work, and just all of the different disorders. It was just so fascinating to me.
So you were just kind of taking like your general prerequisites, and then you kind of just got hooked.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
And then getting into college, I realized I really liked psychology.
Okay.
I think there was a factor. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do the extra school, which is why I was looking at maybe becoming a teacher, but then psychology just had me. So
if teacher would have happened, like what level do you think you would have wanted to go into? Elementary, middle school, high school, collegiate? Like where would you want to go?
Gosh, probably high school.
High school?
I really enjoy, like right now I'm teaching high schoolers.
Oh, wow. That seems like the toughest one out of the bunch.
I enjoy them.
Yeah.
I think they're fun. And granted, I mean, I'm teaching a dance class of high schoolers, so they want to be there. Yeah. So I'm sure it's a little different with a classroom, but they're just a fun age. I really, I think they're really impressionable too, and they need probably more than just the curriculum. Like they need some guidance. And
where did you go to college?
Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State. Okay.
Yeah.
So is that? I guess that's still a little bit ways, right? So you kind of had to like move to campus. Did you stay at the dorms and did the whole thing, or what?
Yeah, I stayed in the dorms my first whole year, and then moved off campus with a friend for the rest of it.
Cool. One of the things that I sort of noticed when I was in the dorms was that you could tell which kids were like super like, restricted. Their parents were like super like, you got to be home. You can't do this. And then all of a sudden, like they're there, freedom, and they go crazy parties every day.
You just described me.
That's you?
Yes.
Like I had a roommate that literally would go out like every day of the week, and then he would sleep throughout the whole day. Like I only had him for a semester because then he flunked out. But like his parents were like super strict, right? So it sounds like maybe you explored a little partying in college.
I did. Like I said, I was a nerd in high school and straight A's. And then my first semester in college was straight B's, which was like...
That was like, oh no.
So I was like in trouble for that. And so I got it together. It was just a lot of freedom all at once to try to figure out for myself.
I always struggle with that, right? So like if you're a parent, like do you want to be strict but not like super strict, right? Because then they'll rebel, right? But you don't want to be best friend because then they'll just go crazy. So what is your suggestion? Like what does a parent do? It's super tough.
I think there's a middle ground, and that's hard for me to say because every parent and every kid is different.
That's true too.
But I think it does have to be a balance. Like either extreme is going to be potentially damaging.
Yeah, for sure. So did you have sort of like some internships along the way, or like how did you sort of start getting some actual like practical like experience?
With psychology?
Yeah.
So during undergrad, I was a graduate assistant and a teaching assistant. So I helped on a research project.
Okay.
And then during my master's, part of that curriculum was to start seeing clients.
Oh, really?
It was really cool. At the time, it was really nerve-wracking. So we had an observation room where all of the students and professors were. And then there were, on the outside of that, therapy rooms with like a single, like the glass where you can only see on one side.
So you're kind of like in a fishbowl kind of thing and everybody's taking notes while you're in there? Oh, wow. So no pressure, right?
No. Which later, like once you got the jitters out, it was so helpful. And I almost missed that, like just being able to have that kind of direct feedback.
Yeah.
But and then there's like a phone that everyone dreaded because if the professor calls you in the middle of session, like you're doing really bad.
Oh, really? He's like, all right, you're ejected sort of thing? Yeah.
Or like if they have to intervene, like it's pretty bad. So you didn't ever want to get buzzed during session.
What were the patients like? Were they sort of like kind of like easy? Well, I don't know if easy is the correct word, right? But like what kind of clients were you seeing? Was it like somebody that was sort of like entry level? Like, I don't know, because I can imagine someone with like really deep, like, conversations or something. If you're brand new to it, it's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
So how do you sort of like gauge the experience level that's required, I guess?
Well, I think that is a big reason why we were so closely supervised early on, because I don't know. I mean, I guess you could say there are easy clients, but it's really hard to screen who those will be, because they might they might start that way, and then second or third session, it's like, here's this bomb for you. Like,
right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just never really know what someone's going to bring into the room. So we're ready for everything.
Got it. So you kind of aced that portion, or did you have sort of like some tougher conversations that you had to surf through, or what?
It was really tough. That program, it was extremely difficult, but so rewarding, because we were really encouraged to work a lot on our own stuff.
Okay.
Because you have to be aware of what you bring in.
So you have to share your personal stuff?
So our cohorts were really small. Like there were only 7 other girls that I was in that program with in my class. And so just you end up sharing a lot. Like they don't force you to, but like you're encouraged to maybe go try some therapy on your own. Like I think that's a great idea for therapists to know what it's like to be like in the other chair.
Right, definitely.
So yeah, and just to be aware of like your own biases, and the first time you start to hear other people's trauma, when they really go deep into it, it can be like, whoa. So even just processing with your peers or your professors what it was like to hear like something really horrific, that was really important.
Yeah, for sure. I could see definitely also, like, depending on your background, if you've never had exposure to some of that bad stuff too, like hearing about it. For me anyways, it would be difficult to hear about that, right? So how do you navigate when you're hearing something that's really tough to hear, right? Like, and you, of course, you got to provide advice, you got to provide encouragement and maybe some possible solutions or ways to work through that, right? So how do you navigate those difficult situations?
So I think for me at least, I kind of have my professional hat on during that hour, and knowing it is just the hour kind of helps get me through that sometimes. So, you know, when I'm in a session, I'm fully there for the other person, and then I kind of put my own reactions on the back burner until afterwards. Okay. And sometimes, you know, there might be a need to process a little bit of that. I think having a good support system as a therapist is really important, because everyone, like, no matter how long you've been doing this, you're always going to have a case that you need to consult somebody on.
I see. Okay, cool. So you did that for a while, and then do you remember sort of your first like sort of gig after college? Like, what was that? Because we were talking a little bit off camera about your work experience and how it was really diverse. Yeah. So maybe dive into maybe some of the work experience that you went into.
Therapy or non-therapy?
Both, I guess.
Okay.
It kind of all like combines to make you and sort of like where you're at currently. So I'd be curious to hear about both.
So during college, I worked as a server and a bartender at Louis in Stillwater. Okay.
And that's kind of like a therapist built in, right? Yes. Everybody tells your problems, right?
Yeah. I joke and tell people that was my first training.
Yeah, for sure. 1,000. Yeah.
Especially behind the bar. Like, you're trapped and they might get a 3-hour session out of you. So, yeah, there were a lot of good learning experiences with that. And then,
any crazy stories that you want to share or you can share?
I mean, I've cut a few people off. It's gotten a little rowdy, but for the most part, we weren't really the bar that everyone went and got hammered at.
Cool. So it's not like, hey, I just cheated on my wife or something. What should I do? Like, and you're like, whoa, I'm just giving you a beer.
No, I remember more of like my mess ups than any crazy people. Like, one time I was delivering a pizza and managed to drop it face down on the table, and I still don't even know how I did that. But I just turned around and my manager was like, "Oh my god."
Were the people rude? Because I think sometimes people are really rude to, like, you know, the service industry in general. You know,
there were some really kind, great people, and then there were some very rude people. But again, like, just kind of learning how to keep my poker face and be nice no matter what. I think that helps me with what I do now too.
Yeah, so that was kind of a little like, you know, Crash 101, customer service, dealing with difficult situations probably, right? So you did that, and then, like, what was sort of the next step after that?
So that was during college, and then during my last semester, I was only working on my thesis to graduate. Okay. So I wasn't really seeing clients yet, but between driving back and forth to Stillwater and working on my thesis, I worked at Mahogany. Oh, okay. And so that was really fun too, just to do the more high-end restaurant industry. Fancy. Oh yeah. And that was just a blast because we got to taste everything. So, wow. Okay. Like, if there was a new menu item, or like we did a whole Scotch tasting. Nice. Or like, there were a couple times that we would walk up to our first table like with a good buzz. Yeah. Our little pre-shift
that sounds
meeting.
Amazing. So you had to like taste everything on the menu to be able to recommend it, or what?
Yeah, I think they did take us through and taste everything during our training.
That's not a bad deal.
No, not at all. Not at all.
And all the liquor too, you sort of you kind of became I don't know, I guess you were kind of already a bartender, right? So you're probably already familiar with different drinks at that time, right?
I was familiar with a lot, but not so much the high-end stuff. So we didn't have to try all of the liquor to recommend it, but we did have to learn about it. Yeah. But I enjoyed that. I thought it was really fun to learn about the wine and everything.
Did you become a wine, what do they call it, sommelier?
No, I'm not that good. Yeah. But that was another class, though. I had an elective my senior year that was hotel and restaurant management.
Okay.
And I was like, what the heck? It was the wine and spirits
class.
Oh, really?
And so that would have been cool.
Yeah, every Wednesday I got to go get some wine on campus.
So you kind of are familiar with tasting some of the notes and describing the wine? Okay.
Our final, we did a blind tasting. It wasn't it wasn't like, which Merlot is this? It's is this a Merlot, a Pinot, a Cabernet?
Yeah. Okay. You tell me, because sometimes it seems like they're kind of BSing, right? But sometimes they're like, whoa, I get a hint of dirt, or I get a hint of bubble gum or something. Can you really taste all the different notes, or are they just kind of winging it?
See, I don't know. I've questioned that myself. But there are people that are I forget how many levels there are.
Yeah, there's different levels. Yeah.
And I'm like, maybe I just don't have the palate. It seems like BS, but maybe I just don't have whatever it is.
Okay. So. But could you, I guess, identify different regions, or what level were you at?
No. I don't even know if I could still. I maybe could, but I could tell you that's not a Cabernet.
All right. And the proper way, so you tell me you're supposed to swirl it.
Yeah,
right?
There's 5 S's. It's see, swirl, sip, smell, savor.
Okay.
I think.
So the guy brings the bottle and he's always like, hey, can you taste it to make sure it's okay, right? So walk me through the steps. What are you supposed to do?
So you look at it and they'll tilt their glass so the light kind of shines through and you see the
legs, right? You're supposed to see when it drips, right?
Yeah. Okay. But first, you're looking at ideally against a white tablecloth to see what color shines through.
Okay.
I don't know why that matters, but and then you swirl and you look at the legs. That tells you about the alcohol content. I don't know
because I know that some swirl down the glass slower than others, but I don't know what that means. So usually I just swirl it and okay, it looks good.
I'm mostly interested in how it tastes.
But then you're supposed to smell it, right?
And so you swirl it and you're supposed to really stick your nose all the way in there. And then you sip, and I learned from my manager at Mahogany, you're supposed to slurp it almost and aerate it just to get all the flavor. And
then the guys that really do the tasting, they spit it out, right? They spit it out and then they kind of do it again, which I don't know.
So the guy that taught my class in college, he was like, the spit cups, that's optional. He was talking about how he went and did a tasting because he was a level whatever sommelier, and he was just totally gone on his plane ride after that. He was like, I should have used the spit cup. Sometimes you have to use the spit cup.
Yeah. That's funny. I wish I had that skill, because definitely every time they bring a bottle and they're like, okay, can you check it out? And I'm like, it's great. I never say it's not, right? I wonder how many people actually say, well, it's not that great. Can you bring something else?
If I go out and if it's a fancy place and they do the tasting, I know how to look like I'm doing all the things, but I'm how does it taste good? Okay.
All right. So it sounds like fake it till you make it and you'll be all right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So tell me, as far as Mahogany, you kind of did that throughout college too, or what?
It was just through the end of my master's, and then a little bit after that, I still had some time. So I was I did a little bit of private practice early on, and then went and did something else, but I still worked at Mahogany for a little bit.
So I'm kind of leaning towards, because I think you've had some experience in the prison, right? So I'm wondering if maybe you sort of geared up before you went into that, or if it was okay, we're going straight into the most possible dangerous situation ever or something. I don't know.
Well, after I tried private practice for a little bit, and I decided I need something that's a little more stable, and I need some other experiences before before I do this.
Stable as far as like number of clientele or
yeah, like, and just financially. So after you graduate, there's a minimum 2-year period where you're a candidate. So you're under supervision. So I wasn't technically licensed for 2 years.
I see.
And so it's difficult because you can't bill insurance yet.
Yeah.
So it was a bad time to try to do private practice.
How do you get evaluated? Like if you're doing private practice, do they just like random checks or something, or you have to go test, or how do you get evaluated?
Like while you're under supervision?
Yeah.
You have a licensed supervisor that you meet with once a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
So
that's pretty intense then.
It can be because you have to do videos, like recordings of your sessions.
Oh, wow.
For your supervisor to listen to.
Yeah. Okay.
So during that period of time, I went to work somewhere where I would get a salary and like get more experience because you have to get a certain number of hours too.
Okay.
So I went to Jordan's Crossing, which is an inpatient women's drug and alcohol abuse program.
Okay.
Very similar to what I did at the prison. So that was tough.
Incarcerated there at the center, or is it like?
So they're not incarcerated. A lot of them are court ordered to be there.
Okay.
Some of them are there voluntarily. Some of them, maybe DHS said you need to do this in order to get full custody of your kids.
Okay.
So the women were living there, but a lot of them also had their kids living there with them.
Oh, wow. That's tough.
Yeah. It could be, but it was kind of neat too, because as they're going through their own recovery, they get to work on their parenting skills.
Okay.
And kind of work on, reuniting their family.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the kids sort of understood like kind of the situation that they were in? Or did they kind of maybe just think it was normal just because that's kind of all they knew? Or what do you think?
I think maybe depending on the situation, I mean, kids are pretty smart.
I know.
So whatever mom was doing to get in there, they probably already know what was happening.
Yeah.
And so that was important too, to be able to give the kids a chance to talk about how they were affected by everything.
Okay. So you had to sort of like also work with the kids at the same time?
Yeah. We did a lot of that. So
wow. That's tough too, I bet, right?
It was, especially in cases where there were abuse. That's always been the hardest part of my job is we're mandated reporters if the abuse is ongoing. So fortunately, I haven't had to do much of that since then, but that came up a lot in that situation, in that environment.
Got it. Did you ever have sort of a dangerous situation where somebody maybe got angry at you during that time? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, well, for context, a lot of women are coming in, hopefully they've already detoxed. But even if they have, just after being dependent on substances for so long, their emotion regulation skills are not what they used to be. So, plus, if there's any mental health going on for them, they have access to a psychiatrist, so some of them were on meds, but I did have some people experiencing psychosis and on my caseload. So yeah, there were a couple times that I was,
and it's
it got
just
a little
you
hairy.
and the patient in a room that's sort of like locked down and like secluded from everybody else, or if you do need help, can someone sort of see that or what?
Yeah, people can step in. I was in an office. This building was odd. I think it used to be a nursing home.
Oh yeah.
So there was another clinician right across the hall. Like we had a whole hallway of therapists.
Okay.
So there was usually help close by.
That's
but
good to know.
Yeah, I've been backed up against a wall.
Yeah.
And
wow. So they got physical.
No one ever put their hands on me, but they slam their hand on my desk or get pretty close.
Yeah. So how do
I
you
didn't
sort of
love
stay cool, or how do you because I'm sure you don't want to show that you're scared, right? You want to remain calm too, right? Because if you elevate it, right? This is another thing too. People always say, do you match their energy? Do you not match the energy? What's the sort of like the recommended route there?
So we're all about de-escalating.
Okay.
Ideally, as soon as they start escalating, we're getting them down. And sometimes like it's just, they're not going to, and those situations are really difficult, but yeah, everything we're doing is like, all right, let's sit down and talk.
Yeah.
Let's like, I want to listen to what you have to say. Like, will you sit down and tell me?
Yeah.
So a lot of just doing our best to de-escalate.
Was that sort of the sketchiest sort of experience you had where you were backed against the wall, or did you have some other more dangerous situations?
Yeah, I remember I had to write somebody up for something, and she came in and was like banging her fist on my desk. I was like, oh. There were some really just emotionally like heart-wrenching things too. Like, I mean, it's a rehab, so I think most women in there are getting clean, but there are still some that are struggling. Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know if there's a graduation involved. Maybe they graduate from the program, and then if they had a relapse, right, and then all of a sudden you get, to see them again, that would be really tough for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that was hard, but I think it's just important that we're always there to give them hope. Like, it's a relapse doesn't mean forever, and
sure,
you made the progress before, you can do it again.
Yeah. So that sort of like prepped you for the work going into the prison, or like what was
I don't know if anything prepared me for the prison. So actually, between that and the prison, I got married toward the end of working at Jordan's Crossing.
Okay.
My husband and I moved to Hinton, and so I got a job at Owasso in their counseling center. So
I see.
I enjoyed that. I worked with college students for 2 years.
Okay.
They were a fun bunch.
That was probably more lower stakes, probably easier, or no?
You would think.
No?
No, not always.
Yeah.
A lot of those kids, especially freshmen, like just getting out of the house, kind of like what we just talked about.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, there's freedom.
Right. And nobody's there to tell you, go to sleep or don't drink or whatever. It's like all the freedom in the world, right?
Yeah. Or leaving a really dysfunctional home and then getting out and being like, oh my gosh, I just survived 18 years of trauma and now I have to unpack it somehow. So there were some kids like on their own really trying to deal with some stuff. So, but to me, that was such a perfect time for them to be getting treatment.
Yeah.
Like they know that what they had been doing wasn't working. They know their family wasn't healthy, and they want to figure out how to do it different.
Yeah. So that brings up a good question. How does a person know that maybe they should reach out to a therapist, right? Like, because especially in some cultures, it's like, going to therapy and all that has a stigma, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know, it's just not something that you should do, or it's not common, right? They just like tough it out or whatever, right? Some cultures are like that.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, I think, reaching out, getting help, I think sometimes people think that it's weakness, and I don't know if that's something that was maybe learned in their family, but everyone goes through something at some point in their life, and I think it's a sign of strength to be able to be proactive and say, I'm going to take care of this before it gets worse.
So you think that's just kind of like each individual kind of should know at what point maybe they should explore that, or like, how do you know, right? Like, if all your life you've been told like, hey, boys don't cry, be tough, right? All this stuff you hear growing up.
Right.
At what point you're like, okay, maybe I should, seek some help here.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a clear answer for that. One issue a person may be able to handle on their own and work through. Maybe they have more resources, a better support system, whatever.
Yeah.
But the next person might encounter the same issue and really need that extra help. So it's hard to say like X, Y, and Z means you need therapy.
Right. It depends, right? It depends on the situation, right?
Yeah. But like if you're having a hard time like functioning at work or in your relationships, like if, something is just getting in the way of you thriving and being happy, I mean, there are all kinds of reasons that people come to therapy. Yeah.
I guess sort of the inverse of that is like, it's not going to hurt, right? So if you go and you do explore that, like, I don't think there's any like bad outcome of that, right? If anything, maybe you get to know yourself better and maybe why you do certain things, right?
Yeah.
'Cause, I don't know. To me, sometimes when I think about like why I work so much or why I'm always trying to set these goals or something, sometimes I wonder, maybe that's just trauma. Maybe that's just me like trying to like be the best that I can be, trying to make people proud, my parents proud, because they gave up so much for us. Like I sometimes question that, right? Like why? Because I see other friends, they're like, I'm just going to Netflix and chill, right? And I'm like, I got all these projects, I got to do all this stuff. So sometimes I wonder about that.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that that's a very common topic that comes up, like our families of origin and how they shape our beliefs.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, families and like romantic relationships, those are really significant relationships that have huge impact on us.
Yeah. And sometimes we don't know, right? Like we grew up a certain way or like they instilled certain values and then that sort of leads to your decision making and you don't even realize it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So perfect example, just to get a little vulnerable for a second, since I make my clients do it, maybe I should. Whenever you reached out, I had just started my private practice. Yeah. And I almost didn't want to do this.
Really? Okay.
So I've always either worked or been in school. Like I've always been busy, always been just grinding.
Same. Me. Like if I'm not like doing something, I feel like I'm slacking. Like I need to be doing something.
Yeah. So even though I was building my practice, I had left the prison, so I wasn't like going to work and bringing home money every day. And it was a lot of the behind the scenes building the practice. Yeah. And I was like, what is wrong with me? Oh my God. Oh, no. And like I was crying at random things and I was like, what is happening? So it took a few, like maybe a week or two, but I realized that my self-worth is tied to my productivity. Yeah. And so like, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to get a hold of this. Like I
think I may suffer from the same thing.
But I didn't even know I believed that. Yeah. And then to step back and think, okay, I don't have to feel that way. Like I don't have to believe that. Yeah.
So I couldn't tell that over text. You sounded like you were excited, but
good.
What were sort of like, why were you second guessing like coming onto the podcast? Just because you thought you weren't doing enough with your private practice or what?
Yeah. Just, I was in the moment when I wasn't reaping the benefits yet. Like I didn't have people banging my door down, which is normal at first.
Yeah, I mean, you're like brand new business, right?
Yeah, like I'm in my first, I don't know when you reached out, but maybe like I'm in my first 2 or 3 months.
Oh, wow. So super early.
Yeah. I'm like, what did I expect? But having just left the prison, that was a big decision. And so, it was weird to have that downtime and just feel stagnant. Yeah. And so I was like, what am I even going to talk about? I'm not even successful yet.
Oh man. Yeah. I can definitely identify with that. But sometimes I'm envious with people that don't have to do that. Cause there's people that are like, okay, I'm cool just doing, 8 to 5 and then that's it. Like I don't want to do anything extra. I'm just going to clock in, clock out. And then I don't want to do anything else. Like not even hobbies. Yeah. And I'm like, how do you, I'm never content with that. Like I got to do something. Like it's, whether it's a project or doing a hobby or doing something, right? Because then if I'm not, I feel like I'm wasted the day. Yeah. So it sounds like maybe you're kind of similar to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's causing that, or should you even worry about that is my question.
Well, once I identified what was happening, I was like, okay, I know that's not healthy. And so I had to try to think about like what other things give me worth besides just bringing home a check and being super busy nonstop. Because part of why I wanted to do private practice was just to have more time, like
flexibility with your schedule and stuff, right?
Yeah. And then I couldn't even enjoy it. So
that's funny.
It was weird.
Yeah. The question that I have for you is, in the prison environment, it seems like it's super difficult. Some of those people perhaps have nothing to lose, so why not take it out on you? And then secondly, do you have sort of something to defend yourself? Right. So that's my sort of initial questions for that environment, because I think it's super difficult to be in that environment.
Okay. Well, so I'll start with the person that, who I blame for me working there. No, just kidding. Not blame, but, a good friend of mine, Dr. Averett, she was my boss. And I met her before I started at the prison. We lived down the street from each other. And so she was explaining the job to me. And
I'm curious how she sold this. Like, oh, it's great. I know it's prison, but it's great. Don't worry about it.
Well, yeah. So I never would have imagined myself working in a prison. But she explained the drug treatment program, and I was like, that's exactly what I did at Jordan's Crossing.
Okay.
So it's called a modified therapeutic community. Yeah. So the treatment happens, all day. It's like very intensive, and there's a focus on the community, on them helping each other. Okay. So we are there to facilitate groups, talk to people one-on-one when needed, but a lot of it is by the community, like I see them working together. So when you say people have nothing to lose, that is partly true. That was one of the first things I remember learning in training is that that we have everything to lose and they have everything to gain by compromising us. Yeah. And so there were some inmates that I think, and even some that explicitly told us that that was their plan. They were going to play the long game and they compromise the stuff.
They told you this. Oh, wow.
This individual ended up in SHU. No surprise. But a lot of the guys, though, I'd say the majority are people who really want to change and don't want to come back. They want to be better fathers and husbands. And so I don't know. And with the programs, like the drug program, it's voluntary. So they do get mad at us, like when we have to set boundaries. I bet. But they have the potential to get some time off of their sentence. Okay. And there are other perks to being in the program. Like it's usually like just a calmer unit. Got it. Because everyone on that unit is in treatment.
Okay. And you're not dealing with someone that perhaps doesn't have an opportunity to maybe have a reduced sentence? Like some people have like a life sentence potentially, or no?
When I was there, I never had anyone on in the program who had a life sentence. Okay. Yeah. So
it is to their benefit to go through the program. Maybe I don't know if it's a point system or whatever it's rated, right? To prove that they're attempting to be a better person, right?
Yes. Yeah. So, the point system, like there are a lot of things that they can do to lower their points, and so just programming. I mean, getting involved in all the programs, you can really spend your time productively in there if you want to. Yeah. Okay. The vocational training programs and things like that. Cool. But yeah, the drug treatment program, that was at the end of the sentence. So they're usually doing that like right before they get out. Okay. So at that point, they're usually on their best behavior anyway, because they don't want to do anything to prolong.
Yeah. And my second question was, do you have something to protect yourself, right? Because walk me through maybe sort of the room that you're in or something. I imagine it's like you have to go through multiple locked doors or something. Like there's all security in place, right? So if it's just you and the patient and something goes down, like how do you defend yourself?
I mean, there are a few things. Like we all have radios, pepper spray. We carry keys. So like if I want to go in a room and lock the door and be by myself, I can do that. But we are pretty much on the treatment unit, so they have access to us a lot of the time. Okay. As far as just safety, I mean, I would have guys in my office quite a bit just to come talk. Honestly, I think Jordan's Crossing was a little more wild.
Really?
Like,
oh, wow.
That's
surprising.
As far as people threatening me.
Yeah.
When it comes to just incidents like fights and other big things like that, I mean, we are expected to respond to emergencies. Yeah. So there was maybe more of that kind of activity, but as far as it being directed at me, I think I got less of it.
Oh, wow. That's
and
surprising.
Maybe that's also like men not wanting to attack women. Yeah. Also just with us being in more of like a helping profession, I think a lot of their anger was often geared more toward the officers or other people that made them mad.
Got it. So I was told that you sort of developed some street cred because of a nickname. and I don't know if you want to share that nickname, but I've heard that sort of like that nickname kind of gave you some street cred all of a sudden.
K-Money?
I don't know. I was just told that you had a nickname and it gave you some street cred there all of a sudden at the prison.
I have acquired some weird and random nicknames over the years. I remember K-Money and Lil K.
Okay.
But I don't know who gave me.
All right.
I don't remember the stories behind those.
Okay, that's just something that I heard, so that's funny that I heard that.
But I know where you heard that. Yeah.
Cool. So never any sketchy situation. It sounds like you were kind of like had a respect, right? Like from the people there. And
for the most part, it was a pretty positive experience. Like I wouldn't change it.
All right. So tell me about this BRAVE program. It sounds like it's an acronym. So maybe tell me what that stands for and then what the program entails.
Okay. So BRAVE stands for Bureau Rehabilitation and Values Enhancement. It's for first-time federal offenders. They're usually younger. Like we had a lot in their early 20s.
Oh, wow. Really young.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And usually toward the beginning of a longer sentence. Mm-hmm. So that program was a little different. It was new, so I was involved in activating the program.
Okay.
And that was it was a little rough. I'm not gonna lie.
What about it?
Just kind of having chaos and trying to move it toward order.
Okay. And if they're younger, they're probably like still in a rebel phase, maybe trying to prove themselves or something, maybe, or no?
Yeah, definitely. So some had done time like maybe in state or other prisons. And so there were some that were interested in programming, and there were some that were definitely interested in like gang affiliation and continuing their current lifestyle. So, I mean, we did our best to, really help them understand what they could do to make their time productive and stay out of shoe.
Yeah. So you were kind of responsible for the curriculum and like what the program entailed, or you were setting it up, right?
Yeah, the curriculum was already established.
Okay.
So I was doing a lot of what I did in the drug program, like facilitating groups and things like that.
Got it.
So for me, I think it was just such a difficult adjustment because I went from guys at the end of their sentence who were like, let's get this done and get out.
They're
and
happy, right?
Yeah. And like really like, let me figure my life out so I don't have to come back. Mm-hmm. And then guys that are just arriving, still pretty young, and they're just trying to figure things out.
And I bet if you're arriving anyways, you're probably trying to prove yourself and you don't want to look weak, right, in front of everybody else. So they're probably like doing things that aren't the smartest at the time.
Several of them are making not great choices.
Yeah. You talked about all of a sudden you have a private practice. The leap from going, to something that's steady, the income is there, paycheck, right? And taking that leap to doing your own thing. That's always a scary thing. So maybe walk me through like what led you to that, decision and how'd you go about like making that jump? Because I always think that jump is the hardest thing.
Yeah, it was a really difficult decision and a scary jump. Right now, I'm really happy I did it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But there were a few things. So with the prison, overall, it was a great experience, and I met some really, really awesome friends that I think I'll be friends with for a long time. And just like the knowledge and the experience was amazing.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize it at first, but especially looking back now, I could see that it was affecting me outside of work.
Okay.
So even though I didn't have people trying to attack me or anything, like overall I was safe. Yeah. Just always listening to the radio, having to respond to emergencies, just like always the idea that something could happen at any moment.
Right. You're always kind of like tense, right? Or just kind of like on your toes all of a sudden, right? Yeah.
And especially that last year in the BRAVE program, my office was in a cell on the unit.
Really?
Yeah. So I mean, they could just come in there anytime.
Jeez.
And
I don't know how you did it.
I don't know.
Like usually people are trying to like break out of prison, right? But you're going every day into prison.
Well, I did break out, so
yeah.
But yeah, it was just a lot. Like it was always noisy, and so I felt so mentally drained by the time I got home.
Yeah.
And that's a switch that's really hard to turn on and off. That like hypervigilance and like always being ready for
right.
something. So I just didn't want to do that long term.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Does it sort of like cause you to lose hope in humanity in certain aspects, right? Because if you're seeing always like the worst in people and the worst situations and hearing about all this stuff, are you kind of like, okay, we're doomed as a society, or no? Or you're like, okay, because to me, it'd be like hearing all this negative stuff. It's like, geez, like, can I trust anybody? You know?
Yeah, I think it made me more skeptical of people on a healthy level.
Okay.
Because I think growing up, I kind of grew up in a little like bubble, like just kind of like privileged and really not having to worry about, like, I would just go to school and church and dance that was it. So I was very trusting of people, maybe too much. And so I think it was maybe good to see the other side of things. Yeah. But like, as far as losing hope in humanity, I think if anything, it like gave me hope for people.
Really? Okay.
The prison and the rehab, there were just really high highs and really low lows. So there were individuals at both places that you're just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like, whoa.
Yeah, you think you're having a Monday, right? Yeah. That Monday, like all of a sudden, here comes, this one guy or whatever that's a jerk or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, there were some guys in there truly committed to just being their worst selves.
Yeah, that.
But the other side of that was just the dramatic transformations on the other end.
But now, sort of what you're doing with your private practice, it's like more family, marriage oriented, or like what type of like sort of services do you provide?
So I will see a lot of different presenting issues, but I specialize in trauma and treating couples. Okay. So that's basically my whole caseload right now is couples and people working through some trauma. Wow. Okay. Yeah. And that's what I really enjoy. That's what I'm marketing, because that's those are the things that I think are really rewarding that I want to do. Yeah. Kind of going back to your question earlier about making that jump to private practice, I always saw it as being more of like a retirement plan. Okay. And so it was scary, but also really exciting to think I can just go ahead and do that right now. Why do I need to wait? Yeah. Sometimes people like wait and put off things, and then all of a sudden they run out of time. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So you just like went for it. You like found an office and you're like, I'm going to do it. And then sort of, how did you sort of spread the word and like start gaining some of those clients? So I have a really great support system in the therapy community. Like I'm in touch with a lot of other therapists and have just stayed in touch with people because I've had all these jobs. Awesome. So I let people know. And a lot of the therapists that are also in private practice that have been for a while are on waiting lists. Like they're full. So I got referrals from them. That's cool. Yeah. Yeah. And then Psychology Today, I get a lot of referrals from there as well. So I have a listing there. Awesome. So it sounds like the majority of your cases are couples. How does the interaction work, right? Like you can't take one side or the other, right? Like right. How do you go about that? So yeah, I do my best to be non-biased. It's a lot of like restructuring their interactions. So not so much letting them start a topic and run with it. Like, we're not going to decide who's right about this thing. Okay. We're going to look at the way you guys interact. Because when couples have been together for a while, there's a cycle or like a pattern that they get stuck in. We get so used to the way we interact in relation to the people in our lives that
Yeah.
we get these patterns that are just entrenched. And so sometimes those aren't healthy. So it's a lot of looking at those patterns, talking about how they can do things differently. And usually, or often, that will take care of a few problems.
Yeah. Do you find that sort of you uncover maybe the source of what's driving some of that behavior? Because we were talking about it earlier, like some of your upbringing, maybe like the relationships that you were exposed to as a kid. Maybe you thought that type of interaction was normal.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe that has a lot to the shaping of like what type of relationship you're going to have.
Definitely.
Do you think that's sort of a driver?
Yeah. We have a lot of conversations like that.
Okay.
Just why does he do this? Why does he always say,
Yeah.
And so, well, we'll talk about that. Why do you do that?
Right.
And I mean, almost all my couples, we end up talking about the families they grew up in. And I think that helps to like the other partner to not vilify them, that it's not like they're doing this to you. They're doing what they've known their whole life. And the fact that they're both there tells me that they're willing to change some things.
Yeah.
So,
and is that sort of the optimal route, is to have everybody in the same room at the same time, or is it preferred to have them separate and have sort of a more deep conversation with each individual?
I start the very first session with a couple by talking to them one-on-one, but after that, it's almost always together.
Oh, okay.
I think we get more done, and I don't want it to ever turn into like a secret keeping situation.
But you don't think that, well, I don't know, this is me, but I would think that maybe I would hold back, right? Like if I don't want to hurt that person's feelings or something, maybe I'm not going to be as honest. Like if it was just you and me talking, I don't know, maybe that's just me.
Yeah. That happens sometimes, but usually I'm just thinking of the couples I have right now. A lot of them maybe should be more afraid of hurting each other's feelings.
Yeah.
So like they've had.
So just like let it out. Like they're just like super vulnerable.
Yeah. And there are some that are on the opposite side of that spectrum. Like they hold back, and so they don't have the important conversations that need to be had because they don't want conflict. But then there are the other ones that I'm like constantly stopping them and jumping in and like, time out. Like, we're yelling again. How did that happen?
Do you sort of like, we were talking about in the prison that sort of was affecting you, right? Like, so hearing all these problems too, does that have any effect, or can you sort of unplug, like, and not take it out on your personal relationships outside of work? I
find that what I'm doing now, unless it's just a really rough session, or like some really, awful traumatic stuff comes out that's hard to hear, it's usually not too difficult for me to leave it at work.
Okay.
And I think that's partly because I'm seeing them once a week at the most. So I know that they're managing, like they're going out and functioning, like their marriage isn't perfect, but like we're just going to work on it. And at the prison, like I saw the same clients for 40 hours a week.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
They were there all the time, every day. And so it was harder sometimes to go home and not think about it because like you're there with them for so much time.
Yeah. So where can people find you? Go ahead and maybe plug in your social media. I don't know if you have a website, like, go ahead and plug in everything. If people like, what type of services do you provide? If someone is looking for X help, like what type of services are you offering?
Okay. So like I mentioned, couples therapy. Right now I'm working primarily with adults.
Okay.
And then as far as trauma, there are a lot of different treatments for trauma. I used cognitive processing therapy. It's evidence-based, it's backed in research, and it's pretty effective for a lot of people. So those are kind of my specialties, but I also treat anxiety, depression, other things.
Okay.
So
where can people find you?
Psychology Today, if you go there and search Kelly Morgan. My office is in Yukon.
Okay.
My website is kellymorganlmft.com.
Okay. We are getting the signal here that we're running out of time.
Okay.
But I heard that one time you serenaded some celebrities. I definitely want to hear about that.
Okay. So when I was in college, dancing at OSU, so we danced at all the football, basketball games, and I think it was my senior year. They got a few of us to walk around up in the suites to say hi to all the important people.
Nice.
And so it was me and maybe 3 or 4 other people. And we are walking into one of the suites. And they said, hey, Garth Brooks and Trisha Yearwood are in here. You're going to sing her happy birthday.
No pressure. It's just Garth Brooks and Trisha Yearwood. No pressure at all.
Yeah, so we all look at each other like, what?
Did they know you had a singing background?
I don't have a singing background. No. We're like, they know we're dancers, not singers.
Yeah.
And so we get in there and it's just so awkward because we're looking at each other like, who's going to be the first one to drop a note and let them hear how bad we are.
And it's a cappella, and the people that you're serenaded, they're singers, professional singers.
Yeah. So I know that they know that we're all worse singers than them. Like that's what they get paid for. But
yeah, it
was just so weird. I don't know who thought that was a good idea.
But it went okay. It turned out okay, or what?
I felt like it was extremely awkward. But at least I can put that on my resume, I guess.
Did you get a selfie or anything with Garth Brooks?
No, we didn't have our phones. But
cool.
Yeah, I just have my embarrassing story. Nothing.
Awesome.
No cool pictures.
Yeah, that's a cool story. So we'll definitely have to invite you back because we didn't get into the dance stuff and the yoga stuff.
Oh, shoot.
We ran out of time.
Totally, okay.
Right? So, you're always welcome anytime you want to come back, especially once you get your practice. I'm sure it's going to flourish. And, I think you should definitely explore social media and doing that because I think a lot of people might find you that way, right? So that's just my tidbit.
No, I appreciate it.
I'm a big fan of that. So definitely recommend that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. This was a pleasure.
Awesome. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Kelly Morgan on the Maverick podcast. Keep grinding because in dreams we trust.